Now a look at all the latest stories making the headlines this evening with the ITV News.
Ten killed in New Orleans as a truck is driven at high speed into a crowd in a suspected terror attack. More than 35 people have also been injured as they celebrated New Year. Eyewitnesses describe a scene of carnage.
Real life horror movie. Everything the car is hitting, it's getting thrown. It's getting thrown up into the air in a way.
Also this evening, a major incident declared as floods hit Greater Manchester and from fireworks to freezing swims as the country welcomes 2025.
This is ITV News with Romilly Weeks.
Good evening. An American city famous for its party spirit is in mourning this evening. In New Orleans, in the early hours, a truck was driven at high speed into a crowd, killing at least 10 people and injuring 35 more. The driver, who was wearing body armor, then shot and injured 2 police officers before being killed. US media are reporting that the suspect had an IS flag and the FBI are investigating it as an act of terrorism. Eyewitnesses have described scenes of chaos in a city that was full of tourists celebrating New Year. President Biden has said his heart goes out to the victims and their families. A warning, Neil Connery's report contains distressing details.
3:15 a.m. and police swarm New Orleans after the attack in a street crowded with New Year's revelers. Officers run towards Bourbon Street in the city's historic French Quarter after a pickup truck driver drives into a large crowd.
Oh my God!
His white truck seen below as the human cost left in his wake became clear.
Something just barreling down the street, bro. I kid you not. Like, real life horror movie. Everything the car is hitting, it's getting thrown. It's getting thrown up into the air in a way.
We counted around 8 bodies very quickly, right in our area. Another young, small girl was dancing when we were coming up the street, and she was just completely flat. But just the fact that these people are somebody's people, and they're not going to be there this morning, it's rough.
The suspect, who was armed, shot 2 police officers after crashing before he was killed. The FBI say they're investigating it as an act of terrorism. In the past hour, US media have reported the suspect is 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. They say an IS flag was found in his vehicle along with multiple explosives.
Because of the intentional mindset of this perpetrator who went around our barricades in order to conduct this, he was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did.
President Biden gave his reaction.
The reaction was one of anger and frustration. I've contacted every agency in the federal government as well as the state. They're all coordinating to get to the bare facts. We know what the facts are.
What should have been a night of celebration turned into one of horror. It is the darkest of starts to a new year in New Orleans. Neil Connery, ITV News.
A major incident has been declared in Greater Manchester after heavy rain overnight caused widespread flooding. Vehicles were left stranded and residents in Stockport had to be rescued from their homes after being surrounded by water. Tonight, dozens of flood warnings remain in place across the country and the Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings for snow and ice for much of the UK. With more, here's Alex Isat.
Turbulent and fast-flowing, the power of the Mersey was in full force after a month's worth of rain fell within 48 hours. Drivers abandoned their vehicles as water blocked roads and paths.
went down and had a look at the river. The river was very high, highest it's been, highest it's ever been since records been. Because we've had some really big floods there in 2020 when the record was set for water levels. These New Year's Day floods occurred at just about the worst time possible. You know, peak flows occurring at 5 or 6 in the morning on New Year's Day, when most people were asleep after celebrating New Year.
My car's underwater. It's definitely written off.
For residents in a Stockport apartment block, they spent their New Year's morning with no water or power after the River Tame burst and had to wait until the water receded before they could be rescued. The mountain rescue team were brought in to evacuate people in the worst affected areas of Wigan, Didsbury, Bolton and Stockport.
Got a car stuck in the water.
Across the north of England, the rain made travelling difficult, with authorities telling people to stay home if they can. Although water levels have been falling today, there are still weather warnings in place across the country and more than 90 flood warnings still active nationwide. Alex Isat, ITV News.
A group of MPs says the government should face fines if it doesn't speed up the process of compensating victims of the Post Office IT scandal. So far, just under £500 million of the £1.8 billion budgeted to compensate victims has been paid out, prompting some sub-postmasters to threaten fresh legal action. Carrie Davis has the details.
I want you to think about what brought us together.
A year ago today, ITV drama Mr Bates versus the Post Office thrust the real-life scandal into the spotlight. The series fostered widespread public outrage and led to new legislation to clear sub-postmasters' names.
To make sure that those convicted as a result of the Horizon scandal are swiftly exonerated and compensated.
But a new report from a cross-party group of MPs says compensation still isn't being paid to victims like Seema Misra quickly enough. She was jailed after being wrongfully convicted of stealing from her post office branch.
We had a burden of proof then, we had a burden of proof now as well, which it shouldn't be. It's like having you ruin somebody's life and then they have to explain how did you ruin it. It's been a torture, the compensation system and all that. It's not simple.
The government has set aside £1.8 billion for compensation payouts, but so far only around £499 million has been awarded, less than a third of the money budgeted. Meanwhile, £136 million has been spent on lawyers by the Post Office while administering the schemes.
We think the Post Office has got to be taken out of the redress schemes altogether. We need to make sure that there's upfront legal assistance to victims so that they've got the aid that they need. And then crucially, we need hard deadlines on government lawyers to turn around these claims and get checks in the post.
The Post Office says its spending on law firms is under constant review, while the government says it's settling claims at a faster rate than ever before. Alan Bates, who in September was knighted for his relentless campaigning, has already threatened further legal action should delays continue. Carrie Davis, ITV News.
The number of migrants crossing the English Channel in small boats rose by 25% last year. Figures from the Home Office show a total of 36,816 people made the journey to the UK in 2024, a rise of more than 7,000 compared to the previous year. Around 9 million households are facing a rise in energy bills as the price cap on gas and electricity goes up from today. The increase of 1.2% means a typical household will have to pay £1,738 a year. And the cost of a single fare on the bus has risen to £3 from today. The new cap covers the majority of journeys in England and will run until the end of this year. And finally, after fireworks lit up skies around the world last night to mark the arrival of 2025, the celebrations have continued today. It might have been cold and wet outside, but some people couldn't resist the chance to start the new year in style, as David Harper reports.
The warnings of heavy rainfall and strong winds may have cancelled some New Year events this year. They weren't, though, going to stop these people at Portobello Beach in Edinburgh from jumping into icy cold seawater today. The Looney Dukes saw hundreds have a wee swim in the briny, some raising money for charity, some just because they can. The Waterproofs were out in London, though, with thousands of performers braving the elements to attend a slightly delayed annual New Year parade. It's a chance to welcome the new year, but also a chance to perform with concerts and choral events. As we hit January, people like to take the opportunity to set out their plans for the new year.
A year of rebuilding.
Today we've heard the Prime Minister outline a forthcoming year of change.
Ridare dignità alla vita.
And we've heard the Pope's New Year Mass encourage Christian moral ideas for the next 12 months. If you're not sure how any of this fits in with your own personal vision for 2025, then maybe you can take inspiration from the firework display that accompanied Big Ben on the stroke of midnight last night. David Harper, ITV News.
And that is all for now. I will be back with the late news just before 10 o'clock, but for now, have a very good evening. Goodbye.
Visibility may be low this evening as the cold weather hits. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello to you again. A very good evening and Happy New Year. It's all change as we slide into the first few days of 2025. A much colder 24 hours ahead. Freezing, frosty, icy nights as temperatures fall, but better, brighter skies set to return. And after a wet start to the new year in places, the rain finally pulls away into the near continent to allow it to become colder and clearer in the next 24 hours. The coldness enhanced by that biting, bitter, brisk northerly breeze. And we'll see some much awaited blue skies and sunshine. Big improvement on the last few days as the cloudy grey skies give way, but also some freezing, frosty, icy nights. Today's rain pulls away from the far south.